And welcome, folks. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Zaheer Ali. Today I have Director Shelli Brunswick of the Space Foundation with me, and she is going to be helping us kick off the America's Future Series Space Talks, series of talks. We're going to be doing these bi-weekly, and we're going to have amazing guests on, like Shelli, who are going to be helping us understand what is going on in space, in security, and in cybersecurity. This is a forum that the America's Future Series is providing for people to share their ideas and their views as to how to move us forward as a nation and as a species, to the final or perhaps infinite frontier and beyond. Thank you very much, Director Shelli Brunswick, for joining us today. How are you?
Well, Zaheer, it's a pleasure to join you today, and thank you for inviting me to be on your event, and thank you to the American Series as well, America's Future Series, as well as the sponsors that make this possible. I'm honored to be here, and I look forward to having an exciting discussion about space and where we're going with space technology in the future. So, ready when you are.
So let me just introduce you to our audience here. Director Brunswick has had a variety of amazing roles. She is a veteran of the United States Air Force. She's also a United Nations Space for Women mentor and ambassador, and holds a variety of different board memberships. She's currently working primarily with the Space Foundation out of Colorado, both as their COO and leading their innovation and education sectors. Director Brunswick, may I call you Shelli moving forward?
Please call me Shelli. That's what I'm most used to.
So Shelli, would you please share a little bit more about your background with us? It's just so diverse. I think I could spend 40 minutes just talking about that.
Well, absolutely. I'm honored to share a little bit. I like to say, like, my background has like 3 chapters. So my first chapter is, I went in the Air Force right out of high school. I was ready to go. And so I enlisted, and I was a personnel specialist, and I got to be stationed in Turkey and Germany and in Colorado Springs at the Air Force Academy. And during the day, I served my country. And at night, I went to school using tuition assistance and got my degree. And I applied to be an officer, and I was selected to be an officer in the Air Force. And not only an officer in the Air Force, but a space acquisition officer. And that started my foray into the space sector in 1997. So I've been in this sector a long time, getting stationed at the Space and Missile Center in Los Angeles. I then became a professor at Defense Acquisition University, teaching about the space acquisition lifecycle, project management skills. And then I finished my career working on Capitol Hill as a budget and appropriations liaison, securing the budget for the Air Force. And then when I retired, that kind of started the next chapter of my life, and that was here at the Space Foundation, where we get to inspire, educate, connect, and advocate on behalf of the global space community. So where I was in the Air Force, really focused on the Air Force, now at the Space Foundation, I'm really focused on that global space economy. And as you mentioned, that has led to some great opportunities, being a Space for Women mentor for the UN Office of Outer Space Affairs. I'm on the board of directors for Manufacturers Edge because the supply chain is a critical component to the space and aerospace industry. And so I'm just honored to be here, and I want to again thank you and America's Future Series, as well as the sponsors that make today's show possible.
Thank you, Shelli. So, you touched on a wide variety of things there, all the way from what is space, what is the space economy, what is space for national security, to critical supporting components, everything from acquisition and supply chain to innovation and education. I think we're going to touch on all of those in the next hour. But before we move forward to that, one thing that's really interesting is that you've seen space evolve. So I think we'd be really interested in learning about your vision, your view of the history of space, kind of how we got to this moment, and then certainly, perhaps most importantly, your vision for the future of space, what you hope happens, what you think is likely to happen, and how it can be made best for everybody.
Excellent. Well, that's a super question. A lot of times when people think about space, and even young people in school, and this is where it's really important, they think about history. they think about the Apollo era, or they think about memorization. It's memorizing the planets. But when we really look at where space began, we remember it began with President Kennedy, and it was a competition between the US and Russia. It was two countries competing for space. And then, you know, that transcended into the Mercury and Apollo era, and then eventually into the shuttle missions. And I came along after those eras. I'm not that old. I wasn't here for Mercury and Apollo, but I was here part of the space economy in the 80s. And in the 80s, again, it was really about government was the leader, and it was still the US and Russia, but a few other countries. Primarily governments were the drivers. So you had to be in the Air Force, or you had to work at NASA or other, you know, government agencies. And that's how, and the government drove the innovation, and there was really no entrepreneurship. And then,
right.
correct. And then as time progressed, especially we'll say in 2004, there was legislation that allowed for commercial crew and those activities that really started to inspire the opportunity of pushing launch activities and satellite production and all that to the commercial sector. So you have to have that right legislation to inspire the course you want to go. And that happened with space. And so we've seen the pendulum swing from the government did all the launch vehicles and activities to now you're now seeing a very large commercial sector of launch vehicles. And the government now looks at launch as a service as before they procured it. Now, one of the other things I do want to highlight, though, that you touched on was the innovation side. Throughout the space program, from the Apollo era to now, technology has derived from those activities that the government has invested in space that has benefited our lives today. For instance, GPS. GPS is a $1.4 trillion economy.
Right.
You can look at healthcare activities, whether it's mammogram technology or materials. You know, firefighters have fire retardant materials. Well, that came from the space industry. Formulated food came from the space industry. Makeup. So there's a lot of technology that we're using every day that people don't realize came from space technology. So although we're investing in space technology as a government, the amount the government is investing is much smaller than it was during the Apollo Mercury era. But the technology we're deriving is being commercialized. And what that means is it's creating jobs in innovation and opportunity, and it's benefiting all of us here on Earth.
So that's really an amazing overview. Thank you for that. Going from basically an arms race to now wealth creation and job creation across all sectors. What an amazing journey of space, in relation to humanity. Now, Shelli, I think you'd mentioned you had some charts you wanted to share with us. I think one of them you actually showed the entire scale and some of the sectors of the global space economy. I think we'd love to see that.
Absolutely. Let me bring that up. So let me kind of talk about where we're going with the space economy. Again, it was really focused on an arms race, as you said, really looking at America being the leader. Now we're seeing a global space economy that's about $424 billion, and that is projected to grow $1 to $3 trillion by 2040. And some experts like Bank of America predict we'll get to 1.4 trillion by 2030. And when I shared with you back during the Apollo and Mercury era, there were really 2 countries participating in space. And now there's over 80 countries participating in space in some manner. And here in the US, our space economy is, again, 80% commercial. So again, a great opportunity for individuals to be part of that, whether you're an entrepreneur, a business leader, or in the supply chain. And those are great salaries. And the opportunities are now open to everybody. So I can have somebody with a PhD or a high school diploma, and they can all be part of the space economy.
Brilliant. So now, certainly this economy scene, as you've mentioned, is significantly driven by innovation. whether it's government innovation or the use of governmental technologies that lead to innovation, such as Google Earth, which was based on the old keyhole spy satellites that were then opened up, the images of which were opened up to the public and enabled the first real mapping applications that then famously became Google Earth. So what is your perspective on what is needed to drive innovation and helping with the emerging technologies between NASA, the national labs, and these other stakeholders? Where do you see that going?
Well, that's an excellent question, Zaheer. A lot of times when people think about space, they're thinking about up there, they're thinking about satellites, they're thinking about astronauts, or colonizing Mars, or going back to the moon. All great endeavors, and all will generate space technology. But what I'm sharing with you on a slide is space is really 16 different sectors. And so launch vehicles are definitely a component, but so is communication and clothing and energy storage solutions. Right now, our number one area in space is data analytics. And that's right here on Earth. That's people on Earth doing that job with a certificate. I also have advanced manufacturing, miniaturization, robotics. So again, this is where I see the technology emerging as we're looking at that future trend. And what I like to highlight is, if you're interested and you want to be an entrepreneur and you already don't have an idea, which most entrepreneurs do, but sometimes college students or high school students are looking for some neat ideas, you can go to the NASA Technology Transfer site, and there are thousands of patents that are waiting to be brought to market. And NASA has a great way that you can apply to take the patent to market. You can get a little bit of seed funding with a grant, but so does the Air Force Research Lab, the Department of Energy, and others. So again, innovation is what's coming out of space technology. And again, that's going to benefit us on Earth, whether it's in transportation, communications, agriculture, energy, healthcare. We need everyone to look at space innovation as an opportunity for them to be part of this global space community.
So that's an amazing perspective. So there are clearly opportunities for everybody in the space economy. Whether you are a business person and don't have any technical know-how, you can go find a patent that might fit a business need. Or if you're a technical person, clearly there are you can participate in startups, in government, or in industry. But you touched on data and analytics with the certificate. And that's really interesting, because there seem to be a lot of challenges to education, whether it's pipeline from K through 12 all the way through PhDs, but also possibly in reskilling workers that are part of our economy whose jobs are being automated or otherwise being removed from the American economy. Would you perhaps elaborate on what you see there, where the opportunities are, and how you might work to fill them?
Absolutely. So as I said, we have a robust space economy, and it is definitely going to grow. And where is the challenge, I like to say, is in our workforce shortage. You know, we are looking here in the US as well as Europe and other countries at a retiring, aging population. We also are looking at a large untapped workforce. And when I mean that, I mean underserved communities, women, minorities, veterans, that don't realize that space can be part of, they can be part of that. We also, as you just mentioned, the skills deficit, the reskilling and upskilling of the workforce. So a lot of times, especially during COVID, we've seen this. We have some displaced workers. And they may have been in the service sector. We know the hospitality industry has suffered greatly during COVID. But right now, there are programs available where individuals can reskill into data analytics. And you can do that as an online certificate program. There are companies offering it for free right now for displaced workers. You can also work to get into a community college or university program for manufacturing. We don't have enough individuals that want to go into the manufacturing sector for space. And a lot of times there's a misperception about manufacturing. They think it's dark, dirty, and dated. Well, in reality, it's lab coats and 3D printing and high technology. And again, those are areas where I need you to have a high school degree, and we can get you a certificate, and we get you reskilled and upskilled into a great paying job right now. And then the third component is that innovation gap. Are we creating those future entrepreneurs? So, and again, am I reaching into diversity to say, there's an opportunity for you to be part of the space economy. So if you're already an entrepreneur, let me help you find an access point to be in the space economy. If you want to be an entrepreneur, there are great opportunities for your business, or if you want to take a business, a patent from NASA and bring it to market, and bring those ideas forward. And again, it's about breaking down barriers to allow all citizens to understand that they can be part of this space economy, and we need everyone to be part of it. We want all the ideas to come forward. So it's part of breaking down those barriers and working through that challenge. And as I shared with you, Zaheer, it's STEM and non-STEM, business leaders, managers, and STEM professionals can all be part of this space economy. It is about lifelong learning. As technology is rapidly changing, we all need to reskill and upskill periodically. That needs to be just part of how the workforce is. And then it's about, if you are part of the space economy, those are higher paying jobs, and that's a better quality of life for you and your family, and a benefit to your country as well to serve in those positions.
So this is a tremendous framework you're providing about how to think about the space economy, not just in terms of defense and intelligence, which is where many of us default to thinking about, or fundamental science, astronomy, astrophysics, cosmology. One thing that occurs to me is that this could be an amazing force for social mobility, and that's really powerful. Now, the Space Foundation, I haven't asked you about that yet, so I would like to now and see and help us understand exactly how that fits in with this framework that you've shared with us.
Absolutely. After working on it for 2 years, the workforce development and economic opportunity and how it relates to the space economy, talking to universities and corporate leaders, we looked at how can the Space Foundation help forge this future workforce. And so during COVID, we launched our Center for Innovation and Education, and we had been working on it for 2 years. And we did take a step back and say, is this the right time to launch during a pandemic? And we absolutely believe it is, because the Center for Innovation and Education is all about workforce development and economic opportunities, so all individuals can be part of the space economy. And so we've been able to take our programs online to serve those who have been displaced or are now at home, providing those skills that they need. So we look at that whole workforce. So we look at business, government, education, and local community all needing workers. And then we look at the entire workforce pipeline, students, young leaders, entrepreneurs, and professionals. And how do we help those individuals make it to the next step? And especially during COVID, we've been able to deliver our programs online so that they can reach not just individuals in America, but individuals around the world.
That's really remarkable. I think the last part of the framework that we've touched on, but we haven't jumped into, is how does the education and the innovation, along with the Space Foundation's central role, fit with the national security and defense needs that are clear and present in America? We've recently stood up the Space Force in a remarkable quick fashion, just a testament to our men and women in uniform as to how fast they've got that going. A whole new branch, and they recently swore in the first enlisted personnel, which was quite a milestone. It's just remarkable to think that this is also the first purely digital branch of the military. Digital first. So they're breaking new ground, or crossing new frontiers, perhaps is better said, since it's literally about getting off the ground with this branch. How do these things fit together? It seems like a puzzle, and you're really helping us put together these pieces so we can get that whole picture. How does that fit in, and where does the Space Foundation and its activities fit in with that portion?
That's a really excellent question. And again, the Space Foundation is a U.S. nonprofit that does business internationally. We are a 501c3, primarily for STEM education. But obviously, we do look at the U.S. and its national security requirements. And I've put up our Center for Innovation in Education Workforce Development Roadmap, because I think it's critical to understand our process and methodology and how we work with organizations. And so obviously here in the US, what we're seeing is we do have a workforce shortage. I shared with you, we're not bringing in enough STEM professionals, but it's also professionals who are entrepreneurs or innovators or have high school degrees, but they don't realize that they can be part of the space economy. So we need the workforce. Space Force needs the workforce. We need US citizens who can get security clearances, not just in Space Force or NASA or the Department of Commerce or FAA, you know, all the areas that are part of the space economy in the US, but also companies.
Right.
Lockheed Martin,
Right.
L3
Private
Harris,
sector piece.
the private sector, universities. So there are projects universities get. So again, you have to be a US citizen and you have to be able to get a security clearance. But right now what we're seeing is a shortage of US citizens pursuing those degrees, primarily because they don't know that it's an opportunity for them. And who am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about underserved communities, minorities, women, veterans. So you can think of rural communities or inner city communities who don't understand that this is a place that they can be part of. And so the first step in the center's workforce development roadmap is awareness. How are we bringing awareness to communities and individuals that may not see space and the space economy is something they can be part of? We've got to break down their barrier and show that space has a place for everyone, PhDs to high school degrees, and it's for artists and astronauts and business leaders and entrepreneurs. And so the first step is breaking down barriers and doing awareness and reaching out to schools. One of the schools the Space Foundation is working with is an inner city school for all girls in Los Angeles. So again, breaking down those barriers to show that there's opportunity in the space sector. And LA is a great area. You have the Space and Missile System there,
Right.
System Center there.
And tremendous amount of manufacturing as well.
In Orange County, just south of Los Angeles, in between, you know, San Diego, huge
Yes.
supply chain sector. And they're having a hard time finding workers. And so I have this great workforce in Los Angeles that doesn't know that there are great jobs right in their backyard, that we can get them into a community college, get them a certificate, like with El Camino College in El Segundo or Hawthorne, and then they can turn around and walk into a great paying job in the supply chain sector. Right now, El Camino graduates enough students that that would fill all the requirements for SpaceX or Northrop Grumman, not both and not the other small supply chain. So again, right there in one community, you can see how important it is to show that there's awareness. But then, as I highlighted, it's about access. And that's the next step. So we are working with that school in inner city LA, but we are sharing with them how they can have access to the space economy. And when we talked to their superintendent, one of the first questions she said to me after we shared how exciting space was and the manufacturing supply chain, she said, can you help our students' parents get reskilled so they can get a job in, you know, in the supply chain? So of course, I put them in touch with El Camino Community College, but there's others because in California, you can go to school your first 2 years for free. Right. So again, they got to have awareness that there's even an opportunity, and then how do you get them into the access, which then leads you to the right training program. The Space Foundation kind of helped with the connecting piece, right? And then it's about mentorship. So I kind of walk you through that workforce development roadmap. And I know you talked about national security, but that supply chain is critical. And I need US workers who will fill that supply chain. And especially with looking at critical supply structures for space and aerospace, having a robust workforce is a national security issue. I do need STEM workers, right, but I also need non-STEM workers. And a lot of that is reaching out to communities that don't know that the space economy is for them. And we are encouraging them to joining us.
So this is a really interesting point that comes up, and your background in defense acquisition is amazingly well suited to understanding this problem and helping others understand it. Because what I'm hearing right now in my work with other different parts of the DoD, NASA, and even the FAA, is that there is going to be a continuing challenge to develop what are being called secure supply chains. Mm-hmm. And this is these are systems and hardware that we can verify that cannot be tampered with by foreign agents or bad actors, by putting things into the supply chain that can then be later used or accessed for bad activities. So this problem, it sounds like, is really interlinked with a whole variety of things. What I think our audience would also be interested in you helping them understand is that moving forward, where do you see the fast growth areas, the midterm growth areas, and kind of the long-term growth areas and opportunities, of course?
Well, I think that's an excellent question. In the space technology sector, obviously, I shared with you, there's a lot of innovation opportunities. And so, what is going to be the next thing that's going to be GPS and create a $1.4 trillion ecosystem? I'm not exactly sure. What I do know is, as the technology is developed and brought to market, like in healthcare and communications and energy, those are critical things that we need. And let's talk about going to the moon and onto Mars. Some individuals will say, I don't understand why we're doing that, and how does that help with national security? So let's look at that for a moment, if that helps, because that is going to be where some government investment is going. So we do know in low Earth orbit that that's where a lot of our satellites are. There are some in further out orbit, and I won't get into orbital mechanics for anybody, but there's a lot of activity happening there that is a threat to our national security. So we do need the U.S. Space Force doing activities there, as well as allowing NASA to move beyond low Earth orbit, because that can really be commercialized now. We no longer need the U.S. government to be putting satellites into low Earth orbit. There are plenty of companies that can now do that. And you've seen that. SpaceX, Amazon, and others are now launching internet satellite, which is going to be revolutionary for multitude. That is going to break down barriers for those who don't have internet access. They're in communities where they don't have internet access. And so I think that's critical as we look forward to democratizing space for everyone. We have to have access to the internet. And we're seeing that during COVID, how important internet connectivity is to homeschooling, to work. So I think looking at low Earth orbit and the commercialization of it, and with these companies who are now going to be launching satellites versus the government investing there, you can also look at the manufacturing sector. Manufacturing in the space sector was on a decline, and then last year it turned back up. And again, as we're looking at OneWeb and these companies launching internet service, you're seeing manufacturing and the supply chain area for space taking off again. So again, critical areas, data analytics, because there's a lot of data coming off those satellites that needs to be processed. And that's a partnership with artificial intelligence. So that's where artificial intelligence can play a role, because a human being cannot process all that data coming off the satellites and the sensors. So you partner that with artificial intelligence to help process it faster, keeping a human in the loop. And then you're looking at, as we go to the moon, what are we going to learn going to the moon and Mars? Well, we are learning a lot of things about healthcare and the human body in space, living in, zero gravity. We don't have the protection of the atmosphere and the earth. So we're learning what type of activities happen to the human body. So men start having eye problems, women develop osteoporosis. Well, as we look to solve those problems for those future astronauts, Martians, we're going to be able to use that technology here on Earth. And we're going to learn multitude of human technology that's going to advance life here on Earth. slow the aging process, enhance quality of life. So the health benefits are going to be enormous. But also we're going to look at how do we grow food in austere
Right.
conditions? How do we purify water in austere conditions? Those are things we need on Earth right now. You can think of a number of austere conditions. As our planet is having climate change, some places are becoming more dry and less rain. So how will we learn from cultivating crops on Mars, and how can we use that technology here? Or how can we talk to those individuals here on Earth about how they cultivate crops and take that technology with us to Mars? Just like we're talking to miners now in Australia. How do they do mining? Because we may want to take that technology with us when we start looking at mining asteroids. So, and again, energy solutions. The energy storage solutions we have right now are not going to serve our needs on Mars. That's why it's so critical that we look at energy and energy technology and how we're going to go to the moon and Mars and maintain a colony there. For instance, you know, the UAE wants to have a colony on Mars in less than 100 years. So there are a number of technologies that have to happen in order to have that colony. So again, by creating that vision, by government creating that vision and providing the seed funding, you're creating a workforce that's inspired, and then we're unlocking technology that we may have not thought about unlocking before, because energy storage solutions on Mars are going to be very beneficial to us here on Earth. So again, I highlight that the moon and Mars is a great vision and a great opportunity for us as humans to aspire to, but the technology we're going to unlock there is going to create millions of jobs here on Earth and benefit us here on Earth. And again, as the US looks to reinvigorate entrepreneurship and innovation, that secures our national security as well as our allies around the world.
It's remarkable. So space could be the cure for a lot of different challenges we face as we push forward into that possibly infinite frontier. Now, you mentioned a word, a phrase that I think it's funny that we're so well aligned on this phrase, because I think a variety of us have been talking about this for quite a while. But what we find now is that this is catching on, the democratization of space. So can you talk a little bit about that specific concept and how that plays into what it sounds like is not just Earth from space in terms of viewing and understanding, but space for Earth, meaning the technology and the applications for us as a species on Earth?
Absolutely. That is exactly the truth. We are democratizing space so that all of us are going to benefit from it. So we are benefiting from it right now. Without space technology, our webinar would not be possible.
That's right.
Banking, ATMs, pumping gas, you know, our food supply chain, our transportation, so public safety, education. So as we're looking at space, it is democratized, and most citizens don't realize that they're using space technology every day in multiple methods. So as we continue to look at that space technology, one, unlock the technology that's waiting at NASA to be brought to market, or as we continue to commercialize low Earth orbit, LEO, and push government funding more to Mars and cislunar orbit and the moon, we're going to learn new technology and new things that we're, again, going to be able to bring back to Earth and commercialize. One of the things the Space Foundation has done is we did partner on a grant with the Minority Business Development Agency, and it was about inspiring entrepreneurs to look at coming into the space sector. And we provided online training, and we also provided mentorship and connections, just like our workforce development roadmap outlines.
Right.
It was about breaking down that barrier and showing an access point so that everyone can be part of the space economy. And right now, we want to make sure that those who haven't seen space as an opportunity for them realize that space entrepreneurship is for them. We also have a program that's to inspire the next generation of entrepreneurs, because we really need to inspire entrepreneurship, problem solvers, out of the box thinkers. And so we have a junior space entrepreneurship program, but it's similar to what I've just shared with you. That team, they're kids. They are initially, you could say they're the NASA team going to Mars, and they're planning the mission. So they learn all the science and math about going to Mars and coming back successfully. But once they're back on Earth, they're now a company. And now they have to commercialize a product that they learned about by going to Mars. So for instance, we've learned that, tires on Mars that we created on Earth do not work as effectively on Mars. And so now we've taken technology from Mars, and using those rover tires, we can now manufacture tires that are much better quality here on Earth in higher desert sand environments than what we've originally had, because we went to Mars and learned that. We're going to learn a great deal by going to the moon, because it has very fine particulates that can get into a lot of things and contaminate things. Well, that's very important in a lot of parts of the Earth too. How do we make sure we have the proper sealants and containments for conditions where there's very fine matter that can get into equipment? So again, it's about democratizing what we're going to do when we go to the moon and Mars, but then how are we going to commercialize it when we come back? And again, that's for everyone. Everyone can be an entrepreneur or can work in a company that relates to space. We have, fashion designers went to work for SpaceX and Blue Origin designing spacesuits, right? So I need artists, I need musicians, I need fashion designers. I need business leaders and CFOs, chief financial officers, and marketing experts, and STEM. So again, that has created the democratization of space and how it's going to benefit us here on Earth and create jobs, and jobs create economic opportunity.
It's this remarkable ecosystem that you've detailed for us. Thank you very much for your remarks and your insight, Shelli. I want to ask you if you have, for our audience, which is very diverse, it's defense and national security professionals, people from the commercial sectors, and also people who are hopeful entrepreneurs, students, innovators. What would you say if you had somebody who was like, I really just want an entry point, I'm excited about this, but I'm not sure how to jump in. Where should I get started? Where would you recommend they get started?
I think that is an excellent question. And the first place I'm going to start is where I started, and that's find a mentor and a role model. There are a number of wonderful programs out there, and I've had a number of wonderful mentors and role models throughout my career. That's why I am where I am today. I didn't get here by myself. Others helped me. And now it's my responsibility to help others. So there are many programs. There's Women in Aerospace, Women Tech Network. There's the UN Space for Women mentor program. There's Space Foundation has a New Gen Young Professionals program. So there's a multitude of mentorship programs. Reach out, whether it's with the Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or Junior Achievement. There is a mentorship program. And if you can't find one, you can find me on LinkedIn at Shelli Brunswick, and I will help you find a mentor. That is the best place to start your entry into the space economy.
Thank you so much, Shelli. Director Brunswick, Chief Operating Officer. I know you're so humble. You're so. It's just wonderful that you took so much time to chat with us today at the America's Future Series Space Talks series of talks. Just for our audience, this is our kickoff event, and you have now hopefully got a really great framework in your mind. Everything from basic education all the way through to commercial applications, moving to the moon, Mars, and possibly beyond, both in national security and defense. But as we saw, 80-20 in the commercial sector. This is just remarkable. What a period of time to be alive. We are seeing a next generation of space race. Gene Roddenberry talked about space as being the final frontier. I think Shelli and I will agree that it's maybe not the final frontier, but the infinite frontier, because there's infinite possibilities out there. Everybody can go and be and do amazing things. Thank you again, Shelli and the Space Foundation. We will be posting links to the Space Foundation and their different programs, and of course we'll post Shelli's LinkedIn profile, which she so generously has invited us all to connect to her on. And we'll look forward to the next Space Talks. Thank you to everybody who made this possible, the America's Future Series, and our sponsors. Take care. Bye.